actually vary across a continuum. Okay? Maybe that's another key thing to remember. Both variables vary across a continuum. So, Jill, one of your variables that's going to vary across a continuum is on-task behavior, which could be all the way up as high as 100% and down as low as 0%, anything in between. So we're good on one of them, right? What is the other variable?
The use of the stability ball.
The use of the balls. And that variable doesn't go across a continuum. It's either what or what?
This kids on the chair or the ball.
It's the chair or the ball. So it's on or off. It's one group or the other group.
So would that be experimental?
It's in the experimental family, yes.
We didn't have any other choices.
Well, and it could be. I mean, technically it could be experimental if we're able, and it might be this way, where we're able to really pursue a random course of assignment to getting the balls or not. But I think there's some kind of subdivision of that that you wanted to pay attention to about whether the kids were ADHD diagnosed or not. So that may influence a little bit. Does that help a little bit? These are not easy. I mean, I can see where the confusion comes from. It's not an easy idea. But it's so kind of fundamental to anything else that we look at. Oh, by the way, the teacher in the video made a little mistake with AYP that a lot of us make, actually. I've done the same thing myself, and that I read in some of your papers. It's kind of humorous when you stop and think about it. Do you know what she referred to AYP as when she set it out as 3 words?
Annual.
She called it annual yearly progress. Think about it, annual yearly. It's kind of funny, isn't it? It's redundant. And actually, that's not what it stands for. Adequate yearly progress. Now that it doesn't matter in Georgia anymore, or I guess it does, it's just, it's going to be calculated in an entirely new way.
All right, Heather, you're up.
Okay.
I'm focusing my research on reading achievement in high school students. And one of the problems that we're facing, Cy and Kwok, these are the authors' names, Cy and Kwok, in 2010, they said that reading proficiency is one of the basic foundations of a good education. And I think we're struggling with that. As a special ed teacher for 13 years, all of my kids, just about all of them have issues with reading proficiency, and hopefully there's some things that we can do to figure out to make that a little better. Cy and Kwok in 2010 also say that 6 million middle and high students are not where they need to be with their reading achievement, and more than half of the students that are going into college are not close to being prepared to the reading level that they're going to face there. And they also say that failure in children in the early years to gain good reading skills produces low self-confidence in them, and it also produces them to have low motivation later in their learning. So this is definitely a problem that we have in America today. But we have some other authors, lots of them in one article, Rosinski, Samuels, Hebert, Hetzer, and Feller in 2011. And also Kelly and Claus and Grace in 2006, they stated that students who participated in a silent sustained reading program increased their reading achievement scores as well as their standardized test scores. So that is what I would like to focus my research on. And my research question is, what is the effect of a silent sustained reading program on high school students' literal and inferential comprehension questions? Also, what is its effect on vocabulary development? And then I also want to do a survey that will look to see if the silent sustained reading program will change students' reading habits over the course of the however many weeks that we have, 9 to 12 weeks, and will it also change their decision-making, or maybe their choice that they have and what they would like to do in their free time. Would they rather read a book after they've gone through this program, or would they still rather do other things that don't have to do with reading? So hopefully, it will show that it will increase their interest in reading. That's my hope. So the participants that I'm going to use is 11th grade language arts students, and I am a middle school special ed teacher, and I do not have a class of my own per se with enough students to produce a good enough research. So Sherry Green is doing me a tremendous favor and is going to help me with this. She teaches 11th grade language arts students, so she has said that she would do the silent sustained reading program for me. She also teaches an AP class, but we're not going to use her AP classes because I think that would probably skew our results a bit. If we just use her 3 American Lit classes and not use her AP children. So we'll have a treatment and a control group. There's another high school teacher that hopefully will let me use her classes and not do the intervention, but give them the pre-test and the post-test and the surveys. And we'll use hers as the control group. So hopefully we'll have about 150 students in the whole total research. And I will send home a passive consent form to get permission to do all of this. So the intervention I'm using, I've told you about already, is the silent sustained reading program, where the students will read 10 to 15 minutes at the beginning of the class, the end of the class, the middle of the class, wherever, but do it 5 times a day for the the 9 to 12 weeks that we'll be doing it. And they'll choose a book of their choice, and if possible, the teacher would model this while they're reading. She would model reading or sitting quietly working, I guess.
Actually, it'll help a huge amount if you can read while the kids are reading. It's sort of fundamental to the idea.
Gotcha. So, hopefully, yes, definitely Sherry will be reading.
Besides, it's fun.
Research articles.
Research articles.
But the instruments that I'll be using, I'll do a pre and post test to test literal and inferential comprehension skills as well as vocabulary development in this pre and post test. And also the surveys will be part of my instruments, checking on their reading habits and if their choice in activities might change by the end of the program. And this will be done at Social Circle High School from August to November. And I'll analyze my data using the paired samples t-test, where I'll look at the pre and post test scores, and hopefully we'll see a statistically significant score there. And I'll also analyze the surveys.
And we certainly can use the paired samples to compare the pre and post test scores, but classically we will probably also want to do the gain score idea and compare the gain scores between the treatment and the control groups using the independent samples.
Okay.
If that doesn't make sense right now, it will later on, and don't worry about it.
Okay, I'll email you. And this is a question I have. Is this a quasi-experimental design?
What's the difference
It is not.
between full experimental and quasi?
Random.
Selection
With the experimental.
Not selection.
Random grouping.
Yeah, that's right, or random assignment
Assignment.
to groups. And so with Sherry's help and another teacher's help,
Aren't they randomly assigned to a classroom, so would they randomly be in a group?
That was my question. I mean, I'm assuming they are randomly assigned. Not necessarily, I mean, if they're not AP students, they're put in a specific class.
who's doing the random assignment?
The clerk.
counselor.
The registrar,
It's, no,
not me.
they're not random.
They're not really.
They're not really.
They don't pull them out of a hat. They
So
do
this is not quasi.
What's the
This is
method?
quasi.
It is quasi.
Folks,
That's
the
good news.
experimental, the thing that makes, that gets you sort of the gold standard of experimental design is when you are able to randomly assign your participants to one group or the other. You can't do that I don't think, because the school will be assigning
Yes.
Sherry's students, not you.
No. Okay.
Now, Sherry might like to pick her.
Top left, top left.
There you go. Up here?
No, it's in front of the modem, right beside the wall.
Right beside the room.
Isn't that the CPU? All right. It's an old
To make you look younger, to make you look younger, baby.
Okay, I'm doing my research on homework and student achievement, trying to find out what effect daily in-class homework preview/review has on students' test scores, if there is any. We know that some students get help all the time with homework every night at home, and some do not get help at home. And some have a lot of trouble staying on task in their home environment. So this is my plan. Well, let me see. The purpose of my study is to investigate the effects of the varying degrees of homework support on student achievement. And the questions I have are, what effect does daily in-class homework review have on students' test scores? What effect does daily in-class homework preview have on test scores? And what effect does daily in-class homework preview and review have on test scores? And so what I've done, I'm going to have 4 groups. These are codes for the following slide, and I'll explain the following slide. But the P is for a daily preview of homework in class. The R is for the review. P/R is daily preview and review. And then the N is where you just pass out the homework and you collect it the next day without any feedback. And then the T would be a common assessment, which is a test at the end of a certain period. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, at the beginning of the school year, based on the pre-test scores, 3 other classes that are comparable to mine as far as their scores and the makeup of the class, like ESOL and like free and reduced lunch numbers. I'm going to try to get the classes that are closest to mine, and we're going to take turns using each of the different strategies, where we'll have, for a 2-week period, one teacher, teacher 1 would be me, would do the preview, just previewing the homework each day. Teacher 2 would do the review. Teacher 3 would do preview and review. And then the teacher 4 would do neither. And at the end of that 2-week period, we'll give a common assessment that relates to the homework assignments. And I'll compare those scores. And we'll do the same, varying. Each of us would take a different strategy for the next 2 weeks. Take another common assessment and continue on just like that. Where by the end of the first quarter of school, the 8 to 9 weeks, we would each have done each strategy for a 2-week period and tested on that. And then we would compare scores to see if there's any difference in either just previewing, reviewing, previewing and reviewing, or not having any feedback on homework at all. Any questions?
But the difference is gonna be because the teacher, right?
Exactly.
We'll go back to that slide, Karen, for just a second.
This one?
Yeah.
All the teachers are great.
All the teachers are doing all four things. Well, no, then it's not because of the teacher. Never mind, I was wrong about that. No, the difference she's gonna find is because of what unit it is, right?
No.
Maybe it's the student.
Why not?
You mean what
I'm
subject
assuming
area?
all four teachers are doing all the same kind of units?
Right.
They're all doing the
And we're all
same,
gonna have the same homework assignments.
but they're gonna present it in different ways.
Yeah, so he's right, the teacher's gonna be kind of different.
So, if unit number 2 is a hard unit, then what?
Well, then
And those kids won't do well.
But they're all
Because
gonna be
they're
doing
only
the
gonna
exact
do
same unit,
Instead of preview.
just in a different manner, correct?
It's just gonna be
Right.
based on homework, though, it's not gonna be what you're teaching, it's gonna be,
That's true.
Oh, okay, that's a good point.
because homework in general is a
What I've been
review
taught, yeah.
of what's been taught, so those kids are, in teacher 1 are gonna just get an additional preview of the homework. In group 2, they're gonna get a review of the homework. Group 3 is gonna get a preview and a review, and then group 4 is just gonna get nothing. She's just gonna send home, right?
For that first unit, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Now, Kathy's teacher number 1, and we know Kathy's great. I mean, she could do anything those kids have learned, right? That's just the way Kathy is. She's just a gifted teacher. Teacher number 2 is me. And kids don't learn from me no matter what, okay? But if I stink as a teacher, then my test scores are gonna be lower than Kathy's, right? Okay, well, all right, so they're lower. But the question here isn't, and Kathy's not testing for whether my test scores are lower than hers. She's trying to find out, does this test for me and my kids come out different than this one that follows the P? Or does it come out different for this one that follows the PR? You follow what I'm saying? So now, look at this design. If what she's testing for is the difference between PR, PR, and N, when she gets done, can you say, oh yeah, but it wasn't really the assessment style. I mean, it wasn't really the homework review style. It was really the teacher.
So does she
She's
know-
good and you stink. It's not that. Because no matter whether you're good or not so good, we're testing across you and your class. Now, so no, it's not the teacher. In effect, this design controls for the teacher effect. It controls for it. Why? Because she's cycling across teachers. But what about my first question? My first question was, oh no, it doesn't have anything to do with how the homework is being handled. It's all about how hard this unit was. That doesn't work either, does it, Brooke?
No, sir.
Why? Because in this unit, we got all 4 different kinds of homework treatment going on. So maybe one unit is harder than the next. But if it is, it's gonna be harder across all. You see? Maybe one teacher's better than the next, but that's okay. We're shuffling across teachers. Maybe one unit is harder than the next. It's okay, we're shuffling across units. You know what we call this kind of a research design? A good one.
Way to go.
Good job.
Yeah, this is one where we control for those other kinds of yeah buts. Yeah, because they're really being taken care of in this design. And it's nice because what she's testing for, we think, has the chance of being picked up within 2 weeks. In other words, the influence of scoring homework like this has the chance of being picked up within 2 weeks. There's some other things. Let's think about Heather's. Heather's with doing sustained silent reading, an influence on comprehension. We probably wouldn't, I mean, we might hope for something in 2 weeks, and even if something is happening with the kids in 2 weeks' time, it's sort of hard to measure. You know, whereas this, we think we probably can. Good job.
What happens, okay, when I'm looking at that, and I'm just thinking, if I was a parent, now I know as a teacher, how important it is to review homework.
Right.
If I were a parent and I found out that for an entire unit, my child's homework wasn't being reviewed, I would not be happy.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, it's a good point. And I think that you'll probably have to think about that with your 3 partner teachers and to let parents know, oh no, the homework is going to be reviewed. I'm going to be looking at it. I'll be coming back to have some conferences maybe with kids where we see problems. We're just not reviewing it as a class. And part of the rationale for doing this is we don't have the evidence. We don't have enough solid evidence in the research literature, which she's spending the summer reading, and we certainly don't have the evidence from our own kids at, where is it, McGill? McGill Elementary School, that this is working. So we're going to find out. And we're not spending the whole year doing it, but we are finding out. And then once we know, it won't be just the 4 of us that know it, folks. It'll be the whole school.
Talk of the town.
He's getting good.
Everybody wanna be your
Just right here for safety. Okay. I am doing my research on the effect of curriculum mapping on cross-curricular instruction and instructors of students with disabilities. Curriculum mapping at several high school. Next slide, please. Just a little bit of background here about Social Circle, because I'm using the faculty as my survey method here, but it's a suburb of Atlanta. We have, about 40 teachers on staff. 80% of those teachers have a master's degree or higher, with 50% having 10 years of experience or more. So just a little bit about the faculty. The high school is not Title I, but we are eligible for it. So we are at our elementary school, but it's one of those things. And you probably know more of the benefits and perks of two and not two, but
I just know that at high school, and I'm not quite sure why, it's a harder decision.
right. But we are eligible for it, but we do not get served through that. You can go on to the next slide. Curriculum mapping pros and cons. Collaboration across disciplines, that's definitely a perk. Allows teachers to identify gaps, in the educational setting. Helps with instructional supervision and realigns curriculum to the standards. Those are some of the pros. Next slide, please. And the cons or the problems. One of the things is that at Social Circle, the special education teachers, especially with the Common Core, coming up and everything with the CCGPS, students in the inclusion setting our school has grown over the past couple of years to where now the special education teachers are having to split the classes. Now, we're on a 7-period day, the classes are 55 minutes. But as a special education teacher for inclusion, you might be in, say, Math 1 for half of that class, then leave from there and go to literature for half of a class. And the thing is they're not hiring more special ed teachers, and it's increasing. I think this will be this will be my last year actually just doing basically 6 periods, 6 different subjects. Whereas next year I'm gonna be split. I think they're gonna do it, I think maybe there might be 1 grade next year, but all the teachers are gonna be split amongst the grade levels.
And
So-
that's common across special ed, across elementary, middle, and, I don't know.
Well, I know it, when I taught at Loganville High School, on block schedule, I did, I did like a math support class for 2 periods with the same teacher, and then 1 other math class with another teacher, and that's what I did all day. But I could go up to the board and teach and jump right in there, but the way that it's set up, it's really hard to be effective as a classroom teacher when you have no idea kind of what's going on. So
It's not really
Coming in the
co-teaching.
middle.
right, it's not really co-teaching, it's kind of coming in
You're
the
like a
middle.
case manager.
Exactly, and you're
You're just
basically
in there managing.
following your students. So maybe with the use of some of these curriculum maps, it could help in some ways, some avenues with some of these teachers. So that's just some of the problems there, and teachers might allow these maps to take place of their lesson plans, which can not be a con. Inconsistencies can happen when there's no consensus. Basically, nobody knows what's going on. Everybody's doing their own thing. And the push to cover materials may cause a lack of understanding from the student. Next slide. The methodology. The plan is to survey the faculty in one of our faculty meetings. I'm looking at doing it during pre-planning, just because that seems like that might be a good time during July, right there, beginning of August. Without administration present, they'll be given a series of questions, pertaining to curriculum maps and cross-curricular instruction and special education teachers also, and students and everything. And then the results will be put into a chart and discussed with administration, and then given to the PLCs, which is the professional learning communities, to discuss. Go to the next slide. And then from there, a focus group will be created where each subject area will be represented. And the teachers from all the areas will be allowed to express their opinions on how curriculum maps can best be utilized and shared with special education teachers. And next slide. And then research questions as a result of curriculum mapping. How will teachers effectively communicate with all members of their department? How will special education teachers be effective members of learning community in their specified inclusion courses? And how will special education teachers foster a learning environment that both challenges and captivates students?
Somehow this is going to,
Explode?
no. I'm trying to picture, the curriculum mapping, and it's almost like it's just at the perfect time as we're transitioning toward the Common Core curriculum anyway. So, curriculum mapping would be a challenging enough undertaking on its own if things were fixed as far as, the curriculum goes.
Right.
Do you see that as being helpful or problematic
for this experience, especially this coming year, because this coming year is where it all really starts to come together, doesn't it,
Yeah.
folks?
I mean, it could
Maybe
be
if they
both, I
change it
guess, I
again.
don't know.
In some ways, it's sort of like it's changing anyway.
Right.
Why don't we get together and change it
Change it
collectively
collectively.
instead of separately? So it seems like that